Hi, my name is Vincent Piazza. I'm a Social Security disability lawyer from Baltimore, Maryland. And today what I'd like to discuss with you is Step 3 of sequential evaluation, which is whether or not someone meets or equals a medical listing. Now in a prior video, we actually discussed Step 2 of sequential evaluation. And that step is basically designed to weed out the most insignificant of medical impairments. Step 3 of sequential evaluation is just the opposite. It weeds out the most significant of medical impairments. Those conditions which are so severe that Social Security provides for an absolute presumption of disability based on specific medical criteria. Now, Social Security couldn't possibly address every medical impairment at Step 3. So what they did is they broke down the listings into 14 subcategories or body systems, dealing with the musculoskeletal system, senses, the respiratory system, cardiovascular system, digestive disorders, hematological disorders, skin disorders, the endocrine system, congenital disorders, neurological system, mental health disorders, neoplastic disorders, and the immune system. Now, I'm just giving you an overview because in subsequent videos, we will be addressing each one of those series of listings. Now, in order to meet or equal a listing, every component of the listing must be medically met in order for there to be an absolute presumption of disability. Now, whether or not someone meets a listing is based on medical determinations based on objective medical evidence. So you need objective medical evidence to support each and every criteria. So let's go over an example. Medical listing 1.04a addresses disorders of the spine like herniated discs, stenosis, and so forth, where there's nerve root compression, where there's a radicular distribution, where there's decreased range of motion, where there's motor and reflex loss, and where there's positive straight leg raising. There's a number of subcomponents there in order to meet that particular listing. But what if you meet all the medical criteria, but you don't have the positive straight leg raising? Well, you don't meet the listing, but you may actually equal the listing. Medical equivalence, or equaling a listing, means equivalence as to both severity and duration. So you can still be found disabled even if you don't meet the listing, but you have to be able to produce other findings which are of equal or greater importance. So going back to our prior example, we didn't have positive straight leg raising, so we don't technically meet Social Security's medical criteria. But if we can show significant damage, let's say to the spinal cord, such that the person has a complete loss of sensation in their lower extremities, he would equal the criteria under medical listing 1.04a. Now, medical equivalence determinations, they have to be made by a doctor, comparing various signs, symptoms, and laboratory findings. And they have to satisfy the severity and durational requirements of the listing. Now, assuming someone doesn't meet or actually medically equal a listing at Step 3, that doesn't mean that their case is actually lost. It just means that the review of the record has to then proceed to Step 4, a sequential evaluation. So to recap, Step 3, you have to either meet or equal a medical listing. That's the most significant medical conditions that we have today. There's an absolute presumption of disability at that step, a sequential evaluation. There's actually 14 subcategories. You now need to have objective medical evidence for each one of those criteria. And if you don't actually meet the medical criteria, you can still be allowed at Step 3 if you equal the criteria. That's Step 3 of sequential evaluation in a nutshell.